Sefer Bereshit, Parshat Vayishlach, on rape and our response to it. A brief content warning. For this week's Torah portion, we'll be dealing with the rape of Dinah. If this subject matter will be triggering for you in any way, please feel free, of course, to skip this Parsha podcast. Join us again next week. At the start of Parshat Vayishlach, and he sent, Jacob sends messengers to his brother Esav. In an effort to relieve any grudge Esav might be holding over the past challenges in their relationship. In the Parsha's most iconic scene, Jacob wrestles with God and man and prevails, and gets his name changed to Yisrael. And when Yaakov and Esav finally cross paths, they deal graciously with one another. Eventually, Jacob and his family make it to the land of Canaan, where we see one of the most disturbing instances in the Torah so far. Dinah is abducted and raped. V'tetzei Dinah bat Leah, asher yalda leYaakov lirot bivnot haaretz. Now Dinah, the daughter whom Leah had born to Yaakov, went out to visit the daughters of the land. Torah continues, V'yar otah Shechem ben Chamor, achivi nasi haaretz v'yikach otah v'yishkav otah v'ya'aneha. Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, chief of the country, saw her and took her and lay with her by force. A lot goes on in the aftermath of this event. Shechem, the rapist, tries to marry Dinah, and his plan is spoiled when Yaakov's family tricks Shechem and his people into getting circumcised. And while they're in pain, Yaakov's sons, Shimon and Levi, take revenge by slaying all the males in the city with swords. We'll focus primarily, though, on the issue of rape itself. While some pre-modern commentaries, of course, offer some less satisfying explanations for this event, often perhaps falling back on victim blaming, the Jewish tradition at large is clear on the evils of rape. In interpreting our very first Parsha, Bereshit, Rashi identifies rape as the cause of the Genesis flood. Genesis 6 reads, when men began to increase on earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw how beautiful the daughters of men were and took wives from among those that pleased them. Discerning the meaning of this sons of God phrase is tricky. Rashi cites Bereshit Rabbah to identify them as the sons and princes and rulers, that is to say, powerful men. He also refers to Genesis Rabbah to say the daughters were beautiful because they were about to be married. Rashi writes that before a woman's wedding, one of the lords would come and carry her off first. In other words, the reason the world wasn't worth being continued was that powerful men were raping whomever they pleased. It is often easy to put distance between ourselves and the events of the Torah, considering they take place so long ago and in virtually an entirely different world than we can imagine. However, rape, of course, remains a very significant present-day problem. The CDC reports nearly 1 in 5 women have experienced completed or attempted rape during their lifetime. 1 in 3 female rape victims experienced it for the first time between 11 to 17 years old. 1 in 8 female rape victims reported that it occurred before age 10. In its 2010 National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, the CDC found that more than half, 51.1%, of female victims of rape reported being raped by an intimate partner. Thankfully, the Jewish tradition has long condemned spousal rape, in addition to the awful kinds of events seen in our Parsha. The Talmud teaches in Tractate Eruvin, Rami Bar Chama said that Rav Asi said, it is prohibited for a man to force his wife in the conjugal mitzvah, i.e. sexual relations, as it is stated in Mishlei, in Proverbs, and he who hastens with his feet sins. What we see both in the ancient text of Genesis and in our current world is a discrepancy in agency. Just Dinah's father and brothers can go out without fearing sexual violence, while Dinah can't. Men today often feel safe going out on the street alone at night, while women frequently do not. Similarly, women who are trapped in abusive relationships for financial or child-rearing reasons find themselves without independence, exposed to repeated risk of further violence. The surrounding issues of women's equity are crucial because what we're really dealing with is a peer dynamic in which women need to be empowered. So what can we do today? How can we help victims feel safe reporting? The experience of a rape is so horrific for one's body, for one's soul, and for one's deep sense of trust of others. How can we help survivors to heal? How can we create a world in which people can live their lives without the fear of sexual violence? It's difficult to tell Dinah's story from the text of Genesis alone. Things are done to Dinah and for Dinah and about Dinah, but she's not depicted as herself doing much. After the rape, Dinah, a complete person made in the image of God, is again given no power. Nobody asks how she wants justice to be brought about. The brothers carry out the killing of all the Shechemite men on their own. Dr. Ellen Frankel, in her commentary, The 5 Books of Miriam, creatively and poignantly imagines Dinah as saying, "From the moment of my birth, it was fated to remain silent. I was fated to remain silent. When I was born, my name, unlike my brothers, was announced without interpretation. When I was raped, my cries went unrecorded. When my brothers negotiated with Hamor for my hand, my wishes were not considered. And when my father Jacob bestowed his blessings upon his children, I received none. That was why I visited the Canaanite women. Utterly invisible at home, I craved attention and went out looking for it. Only too late did I learn that neglect is not the only injury a woman can suffer." Professor Rachel Edelman writes for the Jewish Women's Archive. She writes, "With the exception of the opening verse, Dinah is wholly passive in the story. She is acted upon and given no voice. After she returns to her father's household, she is almost never heard of again in the biblical narrative." Friends, as a society, we need to allow survivors to be the ones leading the response to the horrors of rape. May the episode in the Torah remind us each year of just how much more we must do to create a safe and just society.